Welcome to the Rethinking Humanity podcast, where we dive deeper into what makes us human and what causes us to thrive. I'm Lacey Delane.
I'm Sonya Larrea.
And we are so excited to have you guys for episode 34. It is the challenges of American motherhood, Freud Fromm, and the Oedipus Complex. This is an episode that we have mentioned to you that we wanted to do the last couple weeks. So we're excited to be bringing this to you today.
Yeah,
Sonya, what's going on? What's going on in your world?
Nothing other than getting through each day. It's just been crazy busy. Yeah.
It's, you know what? It's so funny. This is why we're coming at you guys on Sunday evening instead of Friday or Saturday. We have all three have been super busy. We started this podcast during the lockdown in April of 2020. And at that point in time, nobody was doing much of anything. And so now we're transitioning back to a somewhat life as normal. And Victor started a new job this week. Sonya, I think her pace of things have picked up. I as well. And, my schedule can be, all of our schedules are all over the place. So just keep in mind that this is a transitional place that we're all three in right now, listeners, and we are working to get back to a good rhythm with the podcast as far as like having a day that we're absolutely doing it. But we're all committed to it. We're just getting to the place where we can figure out how to do it each week. So thank you for your patience with us. Anything you want to throw in on that, Sonya?
I think you're saying it all. It's just normal life, busy, normal life.
Yes, crazy stuff. So, but we're so excited to be with you guys tonight. And we have some exciting news. One of the things that we've shared and changed in the last couple months has been our logo, which that of course has been revealed and has changed. And we've been working on an emblem and some artwork to go with it. And then our color palette. So our color palette, I wanted to announce that it is prepared and ready to go. So you're going to start to see that change reflected in the Instagram posts. So stay tuned for that. We're really excited about it. Sonya, you listened to a really interesting podcast this past week that you shared with me that had an anthropologist on it that was fascinating. And I wondered if you would share with us a little bit about that.
Sure. It's a New York Times Ezra Klein podcast. And basically it was why much. And I think you and I discussed that, years ago. The takeaway for me was that the anthropologist discussed how the societies worked 15 hours a week. And of course, our normal work week is 40, and most people work more than that. So the podcast really delved into how we sort of evolved into this, even though we're doing better economically, we're working more, which is something that I think we've addressed on the podcast.
I remember in the podcast him saying something about like folks at a certain point predicting that at a certain year we would be working way less because of technology, and we're doing the opposite.
Exactly. Like the prediction was economically we would be doing better, which we are, generally speaking, of course. But the other part was wrong about working less. Actually, people who have higher incomes work a lot more. So.
Yes. Yeah. And they pointed that out. And I thought it was interesting, Sonya. I didn't mention this to you previously, but it's so funny because Ezra Klein is like, well, but I observed that people still work a lot, even like, why would they continue? And I'm thinking, Fromm had an answer for that.
Exactly.
Anxiety, being conditioned to work this way, how much we just suppress and hide things, and we use extreme workism as a coping mechanism for all the pain that emotional pain, the things that we're lacking. So, but it was interesting. What I really love about it is I'm fascinated. I think you know this about me, Sonya, with the whole hunter-gatherer societies and what that looked like. And so to hear the anthropologist talk about that in a little bit more detail was super interesting to me. I feel like based on what he said, they had a higher quality of life from the perspective of like they spent a lot more time together and with each other, and they shared a lot more.
Right. They didn't have the hierarchical, I don't know if I'm saying that right, system that we have where there's one person ahead, the top of the pile. They definitely had to share. And the story you and I talked about was when the person went out, the person who hunted and brought like the biggest, catch back to the tribe, they would make fun of, or, like they would minimize that because they didn't want that person, to have that status in the tribe. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that the person who, when they made a big kill and brought back a lot of meat, they wouldn't be like, oh, wow, you're amazing. They didn't give the credit to that person because they didn't want them to get a big ego and then become very selfish and greedy with the
powerful.
Right, right. But so interesting. Yeah. And they said, if anything, it was the person who crafted not the arrows, but whatever it was that they used to make the kill. Those were the people who got all the credit, not the person who hunted it.
Right.
But it was so interesting. The thing that I loved about it, and I don't know if this is the exact phrase that he uses, but it was something along the lines of like demanded share or something like that.
Shared demand or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. So basically the idea was that if we're in a hunter-gatherer tribe together and you have, I don't know, acorns or I don't know, whatever it is, and I want some, I can come up to you and be like, Sonya, give me acorns. And you have to give them to me because they lived in such such a shared dependent group. And I thought that was so interesting because it's so opposite of how we live.
Absolutely. The one that has all the marbles keeps all the marbles. They don't share. So, yeah.
Right.
That was cool.
Whoever has all the marbles is praised more. But this is something I would love to dive into more on a future episode. But we certainly wanted to, mention it today. And I've actually reached out to them to see if we could get that anthropologist to come on. So that would
be awesome. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
So cool.
Yeah. So before we get into content, just want to remind and invite everyone to follow us on Instagram. We're at Rethinking Humanity, and also to subscribe to us on YouTube. We're the Rethinking Humanity Podcast on YouTube. If you just search it in the search bar, you can find us there as well. We're also on Twitter, but we're really not on Twitter. So, you can check Twitter, but we're not very active on Twitter. So follow us, please, subscribe, and tell your friends. We love to share more about our message. We are also on Clubhouse. We are not on Clubhouse very much lately because we've been so busy, but we are on Clubhouse. So feel free to find us on Clubhouse. I'm often in the Tether Men's Mental Health Hour room, so you guys can come and check that out. And we'll love to see you there. So let's get into this. So we wanted to talk to you guys about an idea called the Oedipus Complex. And it's something that showed up in one of the chapters one of the sections that we've been discussing in previous episodes. And there's also a YouTube video on Fromm talking about the Oedipus Complex. And it's an interview of Fromm with a man named John Harder. They do the interview in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and he's talking to him about Freud's discoveries and the Oedipus Complex. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the second part of this YouTube video, there are 3 different academics who discuss the content of the interview with Eric Fromm and John Harder. Okay. And so we're going to discuss their discussion, which is fascinating. And it's where we derived the title, The Challenges of American Motherhood, from, because what ends up happening, they go from the Oedipus Complex to the realities of American motherhood and the challenges of American motherhood and how we can solve those problems. So moms, if you're listening, I think you're going to enjoy this one. And I invite you to share this episode with other moms. Okay. Because Sonya and I were both fascinated. And I also will put the link to this in the description. We'll share the link to this specific YouTube video, we invite you to listen to it too, because it's amazing. So that's just an overview of kind of what we're going to talk about. And also we'll discuss a little bit of what the Oedipus Complex is based on what we've read in the section as well. So that's the nice setup for us. Let me get over to my notes here so that I can share a little bit more clearly with you guys. So yes, so the Oedipus Complex. Sonya, what are your observations about the Oedipus Complex from the video and also from what we've read?
So my observations are that Fromm dives into this because he brings up Freud, and Freud is the one who coined the term Oedipus Complex. And it's basically, I mean, people have probably heard this term a lot. Basically, Freud is saying that there's this fixation on the mother, the infant fixating on the mother. And what people typically think about when they think about the Oedipus Complex is that the fixation on the mother, the son, say, gets fixated on the mother, and so there's this rivalry between the son and the father, and Freud attributes that like there's like a he attributes it as a sexual connection. And while Fromm doesn't discount that there is the physical, the sexual part, he said he thinks Freud missed explaining the Oedipus Complex from the emotional loss. Because when a child is born, the child comes from the womb of the mother, which we think of as like this safe, protected place out into the world. And so ideally what we all are searching for once you're born, no matter what your circumstances, is going back to that safe place where you have unconditional love. So Fromm kind of explores it from that perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, I love how you said this too, because we're acknowledging that Fromm acknowledged that, you know, maybe there is something to the sexual attraction or what have you between the mother and the son and what have you. But he's saying Freud missed the most important part of what he would call the Oedipus Complex, which is this deep attachment to the mother figure on an emotional level. And our need, I mean, some of you, if you're into mental emotional health, you might have heard of attachment theory and how our early attachments affect our adulthood and our mental and emotional stability. And so it's really drawing the line that the emotional attachment to mother is something that impacts our life over time, more so than the sexual.
Yeah, and I think our last episode, we brought up the incest theme. And so that the thinking actually comes from the incest theme that says that, you know, we have these natural ties of blood that give man this rootedness and belonging. So in case people don't understand that, that's where that's coming from. But like you're saying, it's an acknowledgement and denial of man's longing for mother's love, because that is what we're always striving to go back to, that, you know, like I said, safe place where we can feel loved. Yeah.
So for those of you who may be thinking, okay, well, what are they talking about? Like, I'm not sitting here striving to go back to mom. This is something that we would describe, and Fromm would describe, and did describe, as unconscious. And it's attachment to the mother figure. So it's the idea that we can come to and have this unconditional source of love, have this all-protecting haven, would have no responsibilities, be protected. We don't have to take risk. And that's what he was meaning when he was talking about this attachment to the mother figure.
Right.
And desire to go back to it.
Yeah. So let me clarify a little bit. So when we say mother, I mean, if we look at each person, all of us are going to go into relationships, whether it's with a person, whether it's jobs, whether it's conditioning, all that reflects on your childhood, is the return to the idea of mother. We're not talking about actually returning to mother.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, who doesn't feel comfortable, really, really comfortable if with the idea of, oh, I'm going to be unconditionally loved, cared for, I don't have any responsibilities, I don't have any risk, how does that not sound comfortable and easy? Of course it does. So we all, I think, absolutely can have the tendency to kind of fall back into wanting this.
Right. And I mean, I know you're a big advocate of therapy. So in therapy, one of the things that they always look at is your childhood, because we're trying to fix what we lost in our childhood. And this is the example of that we're trying to go back to whatever it is that we missed. And so, I think Fromm's analysis is right on.
Yes. And he also says there's a scale to which people are remain attached to the mother. And to the ones who are so attached to the mother figure, then that's, very unhealthy emotionally, or maybe insane might be a strong word, but it's definitely not healthy emotionally.
Sure.
And so I think that's quite interesting. And the next thing Fromm goes into talking about is basically the fundamental problem in motherly love. And this is really the tipping point in the conversation, both with Fromm and with the scholars who discuss his interview later, for the challenges of American motherhood. And so he talks about the problem, the fundamental problem in motherly love. And Sonya, what is that? And what would you say, if you feel comfortable, like telling them what that is, and then, of course, comment and whatever you would like to share about that.
So you're going to have to refresh my memory, because there was a lot of things they went through.
No worries. I apologize. I didn't mean to. So the fundamental problem in motherly love, it's the challenge. I know you remember this, but maybe not those phrases. It's the challenge of letting go of the child. The mother has to want and wish that the child emerges from her. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's so many, they go through a lot in the analysis. But yeah, I mean, the ideal circumstance is that the mother gives the child the security, and this is this unconditional love. And then because of that, through that love, is able to let go of the child, so that the child can go on into the world. And Fromm, I was about to say Freud. I mean, that's challenging if you just think about that you're loving something enough to, okay, now you can go.
Yeah.
So that's a dilemma. Yeah.
I think it's a challenge not only for mothers, but in just relationships in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we want to love, he says, and not want to cling, and not want to control, and not want to be desperate for and be needy for, in the negative sense of like codependency, desperate and needy.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, this is a challenge in love in general. It's this challenge of like observing the person for who they are, letting them be who they are, encouraging them to be who they are, not trying to control them for who they are, and letting them go. And particularly for mothers, letting them go. And one of the guys that's the academic says the word, and I love this phrase, that the main job of the mother is to recede her role over time. I thought that was amazingly interesting.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, we live in a society, we're very familiar with the term codependent. It's a challenge. Yeah, it's something that people deal with throughout their life. And you're right. The idea of slowly backing away from basically letting, the person fly, letting the child go. That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I wonder what you think about this, Sonya, but I don't know that it's a widely held or known idea that that's the goal. Like that's the ultimate goal of motherhood.
So I think, I actually think people maybe understand that, like, because if you think about it, the child has to leave the nest, the home, but do they practice it? No. There's two things about thinking about it intellectually. Like if you talk to someone and said, well, you have to raise your child and then you have to let them go in the world, the person be like, yeah, I know. But the behavior is not going to necessarily follow that. And that's what, Fromm discusses, like the different attachments, like you were saying earlier, to the level of attachments to the mother figure. Then in the other audio with the academics, they start talking about motherhood in general, some of the challenges that, that we are very familiar with in our society. I think in many societies, but definitely they're looking at the U.S. basically in that conversation. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so now we're gonna call on our wonderful, awesome technical producer to help us, and he's gonna play some audio clips for us from this discussion, and we're gonna do a couple of these. I don't know how many, but I wanted to start, Sonya, with it's 12:55 to 13:53, Victor, and it's women talking about like the women's feelings in therapy, and Mother's Day being kind of, well, I'm gonna say, and also they're commenting on Mother's Day. So it's 12:55 to 13:53, and Victor, whenever you're ready.
With women patients, mothers. Patients who are not being seen because they are mothers, patients being seen for other reasons, but who in the course of working with them reveal that they feel a lack of recognition, a lack of acceptance, a lack of status, a lack of any sense of belonging being derived from their being women or from their being mothers. And of course, one questions why we need such an institution as Mother's Day. Why do we need to formalize the concept of our devotion or tribute to Mother?
Isn't this a kind of sentimentalism?
It's a kind of sentimentalism which I think suggests exactly the opposite, that we must have rather ambivalent feelings towards mothers and mother figures, and that in an effort to deny the resentments, hostilities, etc., the feeling that maybe we've been cheated, haven't gotten enough love, that we need to make sure that we assign at least one day when we can deny these negative feelings.
Don't you think it's still?
So, wow. What do you think about that, Sonya?
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd never heard that kind of thought on Mother's Day. But if you think about it, yeah, why do we have that day? What's the purpose of that?
Right.
I mean, you could argue every day could be Mother's Day.
Exactly. Just like honor and love your mom every day. Do we have to make a day out of it? So I thought it was interesting that they talked about this. For those of you who are watching us right now, you can see that this is from 1962. I did not mention that. And so anyway, I want to throw that out there. And also at the beginning of that clip, he talks about women in therapy who are mothers, feeling lost, feeling like they don't have a strong sense of their identity. And I thought that was a powerful thing. The guy who was speaking is a psychiatrist. So anyways, I thought that was quite interesting.
Well, I mentioned to you, Lacey, that I enjoyed listening to their analysis. I was a little disappointed they didn't have a female, also academic talking. But in general, what's interesting, and this was in the 60s, the issues they're bringing up are the same issues I think we have today. The attachment issue, the identity issue, the trying to be different roles, like to your partner, and then be a mother, and what happens when the mother, when the child leaves, what's the identity for the woman, when she's not a mother. I mean, you're always a mother, but it's your roles.
Right.
So they bring up all these issues that I think women are struggling with today too. So,
yes. Yeah, very true. I thought one part that was super interesting was the fear, maybe that there was a fear for the mother around giving too much like body contact or attention to an infant, to their infants. And they also talked further about the Eastern outlook on the Western, how the Western mom is with the infant. And the Eastern outlook, what they had heard was that we were very detached from our infants, and that we didn't spend as much time with the bodily contact, mother to mother, skin to skin, like putting them in playpens instead of carrying them the whole time.
So I'm really fascinated by that because I'm very I think that we do it wrong. I think, unfortunately, our society pushes women to do that because they have to go back in the workforce. They don't have help. There's not like extended family. We don't, that's very, like we've talked about that. And so I think it's damaging in the sense that we think that if you're attached to the child, we're talking infancy stage, that you're spoiling the child, which
Right.
if you look at other cultures, it's allowing the child to feel that love and feel the security to go on to the next step. But here,
Right.
immediately in the States, it's always like you're going to spoil the child, like the playpen or the, another area where you don't want that contact so the child can start to learn to be independent. But the irony is they're not going to be independent. There's going to be these attachment issues that we're all talking about today.
Yeah. And it reminds me of what we have previously talked about. I think it was in the episode on narcissism, about how this is a healthy narcissism from a certain age, from infancy to whatever. So of course, like it makes sense that an infant would need a lot more attention, and that it wouldn't be kind of scary. I didn't quite understand what they meant by that, but now that you've said that, I totally get it. And yeah,
I mean, I know I've brought this up to you before. I don't have the statistics or the date, but they did studies in orphanages. This was like in Russia or in other countries where the infants were fed, they had clean clothes, diapers. They died without physical contact.
Wow.
So we know how important physical contact is. And like you're saying, you like the hunter-gatherer thing with the tribes, that they would be wearing, the child would be literally physically attached to them always till they were obviously able to walk and things.
Right.
And then there's just this whole, it's a very different concept here. But then in the tribe, of course, you have all these people helping. You have others who can take care of the child. And we don't have that here. So there's two sides to that story.
Well, that's something that they touch on as well in their conversation. They talk about how families have changed over the years, and how families now are not like multi-generational family homes anymore. And so therefore there's not as much support for a mother to not only help with the children, but to give her some, connection with another adult. And being someone who works with kids, like I know, sometimes
you know this.
you need that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's unfair because with women, women need a break. I mean, you know this because you work with families and stuff, but you need a break as a parent. It is hard if you don't have that support 24/7, so then you're the only person doing that job, potentially, if we're just talking traditional family where the father goes out and works. So this is the struggle that we have. Do we have a society, as Fromm would say, that really values family? Or do we just say that we value family?
Because I think if the society valued family, we would see something that would accommodate this need for mothers to have the support with their family, with their kids, with each other. We would see more community, really.
Right. And even to be a mother, if you wanted to be a mother, if you live in another country, say you get paid for a whole year so you could be with your child. Here, you have to go back to work right away. So you have to detach. You have to detach. Like there's no other option.
This is insane, right? Like you get 2 months, maybe 3. Of course, you're not going to be able to give that, quality bodily contact to the infant. Why? Because you don't even do anything anymore after 3 months because you got to go back to work.
Exactly.
Which in other countries, it's so wild. Like I know that they got to be like, how in the world are they? I mean, I think, Sonya, I was thinking about this as I was listening to it. Surely the degree or the quantity of mental health issues that we have in this country is surely related in some ways to the rushed pace that we put mothers back in the workforce.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I was going to say is I think you'd get an argument that people would be like, well, I'm fine. Or, you grow up, you go to school, you get a job. But then why do you think these people are suffering in therapy and have mental health issues? Because of the childhood, of course. You bring it back to your infancy. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I didn't study psychology, but I'm aware that, a lot of us, I don't want to just generalize here, but, a lot of our issues can result in our what happened to us as children.
Right. It's absolutely true. And it's so much of the reason why many, like you say, are dealing with unresolved pain, and it's manifesting in different ways. I think I want to take us to 1747, Victor, ending at 1831. And this clip, they're talking a little bit about how community groups are kind of overtaking the role of the family to support mothers. And they're saying it kind of in a negative way, like, it used to be that we had the multi-generational families, but now it's like, now there's like community groups. And I think Sonya and I both agree that we think the community groups are great, right? But, I think the variety of sources is good, but I think that, playing this clip might be interesting for you to hear in context of what we're saying about the importance of having, they say it takes a village to raise a child.
Well, while we're waiting, it definitely takes a village. You and I have talked about even communal living, and the support that families need as a whole.
Yes, even a family like the nuclear family, there's not enough there, And this is something that they touch on a little later in the conversation, is how important it is for the mother to be able to be exposed to different community groups. Basically, they didn't say those words, but to build a life outside of the orbit of the home.
Yes, absolutely.
As a projection
and also
an aspiration.
I think, Dean Nisbet, you could comment also on how much the mother may remove herself from the family and seek these loves, these attentions, these affections by going to work, by finding a career for herself, getting the respect, getting these needs gratified outside of the family.
And of course, we have developing in American society in many areas now increasingly groups which, in a sense, are a substitute for the older relationships of the extended family. I'm thinking of some of the clubs and associations, the neighborhood informal coffee gatherings.
Can we finish that one out there, Victor?
And the like. But there's another aspect of the anxiety that both of you gentlemen have referred to, arising from the mother's role in our small family. And that is the kind of anxiety that seems to me to be generated in the American family in the child.
Okay, you can stop. Sorry. All right. So, yes, the community groups kind of overtaking that role of the mother, and the role of the family, to support. Again, I don't know what you think, Sonya, but I definitely don't think community groups are a bad thing. But I wonder, I wonder if there's some value in what they're saying, in that maybe it's more helpful, the intergenerational stuff.
So just hearing what they're saying, I think it's, you have to dig a little deeper there, because one thing they're bringing up is, I'm just thinking of an example, as you join a book club or something in your community. It's an opportunity, obviously, to get out of the role that the mothers are playing every day. They get to be in another environment, have adult conversation, like you're saying. But I don't think that specifically addresses, like what we were talking earlier about, the full support, whether it's having more income, having other people that are helping you with being a parent. There's a lot of different ways to look at that. And I mean, I know we've brought it up on this podcast, UBI. There's just many other aspects of supporting families in general, and I also think the couple needs to have their separate time.
Yes.
Because that's the healthiest thing, is having the couple be strong, to bring that back into the family unit,
100%. And they talk about that as well, mentioning that the mother needs the love of the husband to continue to be able to give love to the child, because nobody can give anything that they don't have. And so it puts a lot of pressure on the husband. There's just a lot of pressure, period, on everybody.
Yeah.
And so if that need to feel loved by the husband is not there, then the mother looks to the child.
The child, yeah.
Guys, it happens. It sounds outrageous, but I'm telling you, it happens all the time.
Well, I know we're specifically focusing on motherhood, but I will throw in fatherhood. I think it's unfortunate in our country because we don't support fathers staying home, or fathers maybe not working as hard so that they can also be part of the parenting process. So if we have this just traditional view, the one parent bears that load. I mean, it's just not, it's not a balanced view, in my opinion.
Right. The patriarchal tendency in our society just knocks that out. And I mean, I think I would even venture to say what you mentioned, basic income, universal basic income would be so helpful in bringing us to a place, number one, where we show a value for women and the work that they do in the home as mothers, as women, but also bringing men home to where they can be a part of child rearing and
absolutely
spending quality time with their kids. At the end of the day, that's really what parenting is all about.
And you do hear these stories, and it's sad that they'll say, well, I never saw my father, when I was growing up, he was always working,
Yes. Yes. And then, but sadly, then people are like, well, look upon the dad with pride. Like, well, he was doing what he was supposed to do.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I'm sure he was doing his best, but guys,
yeah,
exactly. We can do a lot better for our kids. And the way we do it is not by giving them more free childcare. Why don't we just pay the people who had the kids to actually spend time with them?
Absolutely.
I mean, we're making it way more complicated than it really needs to be.
I agree.
It's crazy. And so I guess the next thing that I would highlight here is that in these situations, and we could even say in the nuclear family, the child becomes very isolated, and so does the mother. And that tends to issues and problems. And it's one of the reasons why I am, again, very fascinated by a hunter-gatherer society, because there were always people around. Now, you can't tell me, as we are as human beings, for the people who tend to like kids, if there was a person around who liked kids, which there was, and there was a couple in the group or whatever that had a kid, they're going to help. Like, the kid comes running up and says, will you help me? But they're going to say no. Of course not.
Right. I mean, I think you create an environment where everyone is, where you feel that support, and there isn't one person that has the job. You're really sharing and you're enjoying that experience, to be with other human beings. But when it can be very isolating, of course, if you're the only person that is doing everything for a child, that's a lot.
Right. Yes.
And we talk about self-care, you and I, in these past, that's our big thing. I know your thing is self-care. How can you do self-care if you're taking care of someone else and you don't have time to take care of yourself?
That's correct. And I can tell you from the experience of being a nanny and having worked on overnights and multiple days in a row, it's hard. It's very hard. It's so much. It's exhausting. I mean, it is the most underappreciated, undervalued, misunderstood work that there is.
Right.
I mean, if you want to have a kid because you want somebody to look like you, you haven't thought deeply enough about it. Okay?
Well,
I mean, it's probably cute and fun and stuff, but
it's labor, and it's unpaid labor is what it is. Yeah.
Right. And I think if we thought about it a little bit, we could see where we doing something more than the sentimentalism of Mother's Day would value all of us as a society. Because if mothers are more prepared and more empowered to take care of their kids, how does that hurt? How does that help? It's going to help because the kids are going to be better quality kids, and that's going to make for a better society.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. It's the cycle keeps repeating. If you don't deal with the issues right here, It's going to keep happening.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And then they ended on the note of discussing how important it is for the mom to learn to let go of the child and to recede her role over time, and also to see her role as transitional, but also as a part of that process to take interest in activities outside of the home and doing the self-care, doing the going to play tennis, doing the, I don't know, whatever it is, play soccer, or whatever it is that you enjoy doing, connecting, going out with friends, going on a date with your husband, whatever it is, those types of things. And learning, I thought this was interesting. They said learning kind of to let go of this very physiological instinct of the mother being a mother, because as life changes, that role changes, and the mother is more than just that instinct.
Yes, I think that biologically we're programmed to have, which is good, the instinct of taking care of, the young, the newborn, the child. But as that child gets older, obviously, but like you're saying, that relationship recedes. And I think it's really important for women to have more than that in their life, whatever that is. If they're passionate about something, it could be activism, it could be working, it could be drawing, it could be, like you're saying, playing a sport, but a woman needs more, because at some point that child is going to go. It's just the way life is.
Yep. And then that's why they talk about, what is that, the empty nest syndrome, they say, when kids grow up and go to college.
Yeah.
And
I don't think a lot of people think about that, and that reality is going to happen, I mean, because the other side of that is that you have a kid living with you for the rest of your life, which, but that's not healthy either, right?
Right. For either party, for the parents or the children.
Or for the child, or for the adult child,
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's incredibly interesting how many of the topics, like you mentioned at the beginning, that they are talking about during this discussion.
Yes.
That are relevant still today. And one of the big things is just being able to have the support, have the ability to detach and recede as a mother in the role, and finding other things to support. It really comes down to self-care, Sonya. It really does.
It does. I want to change something I just said, not change it, because I made the comment about the child living. I love the idea of extended families and even sharing space and time, but I think there's the dependence, there's the codependence, and there's an independence. I think you can be in a family unit, because we've talked about this, whether you have aged parents or an adult child, and they could be contributing. But the idea in my mind is that they're separate people. You have a separateness, but then you're able to come together. So this is what I'm talking about, because I think you could have a child leave the home. Maybe they're independent financially, but they have a lot of problems attached because of what they experienced or didn't experience when they were a child. That's kind of what I want to just clarify a bit.
Gotcha. Heard. I think the thing that I take from this, and the message that I feel like I want to amplify is through this, is that we need a society that accommodates mothers. Our society really doesn't accommodate mothers, motherhood.
No.
And furthermore, that accommodates a community setting for child rearing, because it is not one person's job, and it's not two people's job. When it becomes one person's job, then things like the emotional incest syndrome stuff starts happening, marriages fall apart, resentment happens, the child gets abused and neglected. It's a bad recipe. It's a bad mixture.
It's a bad recipe for society, whether you have a child or not. If you think about it, the children are going to grow up. They're going to be our doctors. They're going to be our business people. They're going to be in our society. So we're all affected by how these children are getting raised, whether we are aware of it or not. As a society, we are all affected. They're going to be the decision makers someday.
Yes. So I'm hopeful that we can do what, Fromm has mentioned in past writings, which is brainstorm and start thinking of creative ways to accommodate and to accomplish these these needs. I know co-housing is something that I've heard about, that Andrew Yang wrote about in his book, that I think is a cool solution. And I think that could be a cool way to maybe solve some of these problems for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sharing responsibilities. I think, like you said, the UBI. I think now we have the child care tax credit. I think there's a lot of creative ideas that we could be putting out there. Well, education, which you can speak to. I mean, we need better forms of, systems of education for children when they're young.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot that we could improve upon.
Well, what's so ironic that just hit me is that the words that we're using right now sharing. We need to share, right? And what was our first thing that we talked about the hunter-gatherer societies who shared? They shared everything. And the thing that's missing here is a shared responsibility, a shared community, a shared interest in these things. And so I don't know, just like full circle, we talk about sharing. That's the thing. We need more of that. We need less of the pressure and the individualism and more of the sharing and the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Well, we appreciate you guys being with us tonight. We are so happy that you decided to tune in. And we hope you have a great week next week. Normally we say have a great weekend, but it's Sunday. So we'll say have a great week. And we'll see you next time on the Rethinking Podcast. Bye.